That has our private label on it. You're welcome to it. We are unbelievably excited today, and we're just delighted to have everyone here. Do I have a feedback here? Is it okay? Okay. And it is just really a thrill for us to be here on National Women's Equality Day. August the 26th is the day designated every year to commemorate the day when the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution was certified into law and women gained the right to vote throughout the country. This is why we chose this day to witness the unveiling of the Tennessee Woman Suffrage Monument, honoring suffragists who fought so hard in 1920 for women in our nation to gain the right to vote. And you will see later, those women there are 4 Tennessee women and then the national suffragists who came to be with us and help us in that fight. But it was Tennessee that made that possible, and with just one vote, and it's time for us to tell that story. I know that you will hear more about that today from our other great speakers. Another observation that I want to share with you is that when the unveiling occurs, you will see a beautiful graphic, and I believe it's over to my left, that displays the spectacular rendering of how the monument will look when it's moved on the hill up there next to the Parthenon. It would be on the left of the Parthenon from where I am here. That location, this location where we are today, while it is very beautiful, is the temporary location for the next several months until the suffragists reach their final home beside the magnificent Parthenon. Because we have a full and rich program today, to help move the program along, I'm going to take time now to introduce the introducers of the women and the men who are going to be introducing the speakers in more detail. And also, I'll introduce 2 people who will be speaking on behalf of two of our deceased trailblazers. So as each speaker completes his or her remarks, the next speaker will already be ready immediately, and they will be introduced by these wonderful folks I'm about to introduce. First, we have Judge Martha Craig Daughtry, the first woman to sit on the Tennessee Supreme Court, and also is a senior judge on the United States Courts of Appeals to the Sixth Circuit. Next is Chief Justice Sharon Lee of Madisonville. She's a member of the Tennessee Supreme Court now, and she was appointed in 2008. Also on the Supreme Court now, Justice Connie Clark of Nashville, also a member of the Supreme Court and appointed in 2005. Justice Holly Kirby of Memphis, starting on the back row back here, a member of the current Tennessee Supreme Court and appointed in 2013. Mr. Tommy Lynch, who is the director of Metro Parks. And he is a man that I have observed who has an understanding of what public service really means. And it shows in everything he does. And I have been so impressed by that, and also by your staff, Mr. Lynch. They've been wonderful. Ellen Davis, great-granddaughter of Governor A.H. Roberts, who signed Tennessee's certification of the ratification of the 19th Amendment on August the 24th, 1920. Chancellor Claudia Bonneman, another great-granddaughter of Governor A.H. Roberts, and also is Chancellor of the 20th Judicial District in Nashville and Davidson County. Representative Ramash Akbari, I think she's to my far right. She represents the 91st District, Shelby County, in the House of Representatives for Tennessee, and she was elected in 2013. Justice Janice Holder of Memphis, former Chief Justice and member of the Tennessee Supreme Court. She was the first woman to hold the office of Chief Justice, and she will be introducing one of our three trailblazers today. Charles Trauber, former chair of the Tennessee Parole and Probation Board and husband of the late Representative Lois DeBerry. He will share his thoughts about his wonderful trailblazer wife with us today. And Ellen Lehman, president of the Community Fund of Middle Tennessee and daughter of the late Jane Eskin. Ellen will speak to us today about her mother, a woman that has been universally described as a trailblazer. Lisa Silver, who's the music director of Congregation Micah, a superb musician and singer, and she will sing for us later. So, as Paula Casey, the president of the Women's Suffrage Board, is coming up to the podium to speak, I'm going to ask, I have two things to do here, Paula. You're so close, you can just stay right there. If you are an elected official, and I know some of you here are standing, but would you, if you're seated, would you stand? If you're standing, maybe hold up your hand. If you're an elected official of any kind, we want to thank you for your public service. And one of our board members, Linda Knight, asked me to announce this while I had the mic. If you are a member of the Tennessee Bar Association or the National Association of Women Lawyers, would you, after this is over, meet over that way, I think, for a picture? Thank you very much, Paula.
Hello, is it a great day to be in the state that guaranteed all American women the right to vote? We are so delighted to have you here today. This has been a long time coming. We are thrilled with the response and the support that we have received, and I want to acknowledge our board. I want all of you here to know that our board is a statewide volunteer board, and we have worked tirelessly to make this day happen. Yvonne Wood, our secretary. Pat Pierce, Yvonne's from Lebanon. Pat Pierce is from Harriman. Alma Sanford is from Nashville. Linda Knight's from Nashville. Adrian Packus-Dillon from Germantown. Jana Santani from Nashville. Jackie Hillman. Jackie is the designer of our commemorative limited edition pins. If you see us wearing these, Jackie is a fabulous jewelry designer, and she has contributed so much to make this day happen. From Jackson. And we also have Rosetta Miller-Perry, who is the publisher of the Tennessee Tribune, who couldn't be with us today, but we have just had a phenomenal time working together. Now, I always point out that it was the men in those 36 state legislatures who voted to willingly share power. It was a peaceful effort, the greatest nonviolent revolution in our country, and the fact that it happened in Tennessee deserves to be commemorated. Too few people know this story, and goodness knows there are far too few statues dedicated to women. So we're doing our part to rectify that. We're going to have 5 magnificent women on this statue, and then we are going to honor 3 women who are significant in Tennessee's political history, whose careers were made possible by the suffragist victory. And just so you know, the correct term is suffragist. The Americans were the suffragists, the British were the suffragettes. We are honoring Tennessee's suffragists. So I want to point out that there have been some men who have been with us and been so supportive, starting with the man who will always be in our hearts, Dick Eskin. And the entire Eskin family. We are so appreciative that they shared our vision. And another man who has been with us throughout all of this, Charles Trauber. We are so happy that we're going to be able to acknowledge their wonderful wives, Jane Eskin and Lois DeBerry of blessed memory. This is an opportunity for us to tell the story about what happened in Tennessee. We want people to know 50, 100 years from now why this mattered. These women and the men who supported them changed the course of history without firing a single shot. It was the greatest nonviolent revolution in the history of our country and enfranchised half the population in 1920. There will be people who will wonder, was there really a time in this country when women couldn't vote? Yes, there was. And they proved that democracy works. Our board extends a tremendous thank you for all of the support that we have received. And we want you to know that this is a temporary location, and we will have a fabulous promenade and plaza over by the Parthenon later when the park renovation is complete. People can still contribute. If you would like to have your name engraved on the wall, you can go to our website, tn4TennesseeSuffrageMonument.org. And today we will be unveiling the statue and the signage that depicts all of the donors, the suffragist bios, and how Tennessee became the perfect 36. Thank you so much for your support.
It is a tremendous privilege and honor to have been asked to participate in this incredible and inspiring event, and also to celebrate the 96th anniversary of women's suffrage in this country. At the same time that we celebrate the heroic women, and at least one heroic man of 1920, we also celebrate today their worthy successors, one of whom I've been asked to introduce, Mayor Megan Barry. As most of you probably know, she is the first woman to hold that office in Nashville. And because of her stunningly successful campaign last year, she really needs no introduction to Nashvillians. But we want the rest of Tennessee to know what an admirable public servant she's been for many years, how excited we are to support her and be led by her during her term, should I perhaps say terms, as mayor. And we are hopeful that she will go on to hold even higher office in the future. If so, she will stand on the shoulders not only of Susan B. Anthony Alice Paul and Carrie Chapman Catt, and also the suffragists that we honor today by this magnificent statue, but also the courageous Tennessee women who led the way and are my personal heroes. To name just a few: Betty Nixon in her early run for Nashville mayor, and Jane Eskin and Kim McMillan in their runs for governor. When Megan Barry moved to Nashville in 1990, the first civic step she took was to join the League of Women Voters. And that organization was formed by the suffragists right after the ratification of the 19th Amendment. So she is, to my mind, their 21st century embodiment in spirit and in fact. I give you Mayor Megan Barry.
Judge, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It is so wonderful to be here, and I have a new appreciation for the suffragettes who marched in this heat. I want to give a quick shout out to the council members who are here, the women council members who are here, who are elected that I have seen. I know that Councilmember Hurt is here, Councilmember Johnson is here, Councilmember Haywood is here, Councilmember Erica Gilmore I know is here, Councilmember Roberts is here, Councilmember Johnson is here. I think it's important that we continue to realize that we are making progress. Sometimes it feels slow, but we have great women who represent Nashville on the Metro Council, so thank you for your service. I also want to take a quick moment and thank all of the great women who made this monument happen. You all who are sitting right here, and without your commitment, your passion, and your energy, we would not be here today. Now, November would have been better, and of course, Alan. It took two hands to make this happen, and Alan LaGuire, once again, has done beautiful work for us. And I want to echo Judge Daughtry's shout out to our dear friends, Jane Eskin, who led the way for so much of what we've been able to see here in Tennessee, and our dear friend Betty Nixon, who taught me a lot about city politics and service and neighborhoods, and I know that she is also today here with us in spirit. 100 years ago, there was another powerful Nashville woman, and she had a really strong sense of what matters. That woman was Ann Dallas Dudley, and she led a parade from the Tennessee State Capitol to this beautiful park where 2,000 people joined her to give voice to one simple demand: give women the right to vote. And fortunately for us, she was just getting started. She was a force of nature. She was beautiful, she was wealthy, she had a lovely home and a family, and she could have just sat back and enjoyed her life in Nashville and not done anything. But that's not how she saw herself. She wasn't content with that life because she didn't have a voice and she didn't have a vote. So she traveled around the United States and she went to talk about why women should have the right to vote. When opponents say only men should have that right because only men could bear arms, she had a brilliant reply. She said, yes, but women bear armies. And in August of 1920, when Tennessee was in the spotlight with the opportunity to ratify that 19th Amendment and give women the right to vote, Ann Dallas Dudley helped lead the charge up to the Capitol. And without her, the 19th Amendment simply would not have happened here in Tennessee, and we don't know if it would have passed, period. So when I moved to Nashville, the very first house I lived in was on Dudley Avenue. I think maybe that was a sign. And we're also very fortunate to have two of Ann Dallas Dudley's grandchildren here with us today, so we're grateful for them. And another woman who also played an important role in the events of 1920 was Frankie Pierce. She had a completely different story than Ann Dallas Dudley. She was born a slave in Smith County around the time of the Civil War. So when she addressed the state suffragette convention in May of 1920, this African-American leader spoke to the delegates in very direct terms. We are asking only one thing, she said, a square deal. Finally, I want to mention one woman who's not on the monument, and we're not going to see her. She wasn't from Nashville. Her name was Phoebe Byrne of Nyota in East Tennessee. Mrs. Byrne sent a very important letter to Nashville 96 years ago this month, a letter with an audience of one and an impact that is really impossible to quantify. Her son, 24-year-old State Representative Harry Byrne, took that letter to heart. He changed his mind. He voted for the ratification of the 19th Amendment, breaking what would have been a 48-48 tie. And it did take 49 men to make this happen, and Representative Byrne was one of them. And he said, famously, "I know that a mother's advice is always the safest to follow." So he did what she asked, and I think that's a very good lesson for my son and any other sons that are sitting out there. And a century later, thanks to the dedication and perseverance and passion and moral imagination of each of these women and many more, like Mayor Rohero, like Mayor McMillan, like Speaker Harwell, I get to stand before you, not just as a voter. The four of us are part of thousands of women across this country who are elected leaders. And now we have an opportunity to vote for a woman for president. And it's taken 96 years. And as the mayor of Nashville, I couldn't be more proud that we are here in a city that made it all happen. And that monument that we're going to be able to unveil today will stand as a beautiful tribute to all the women who fought so hard for us. And like all of them, we have to remember to reach back so that we can pull the next ones forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Berry. It is now my great pleasure to introduce to you the mayor of the city of Knoxville, Madeline Rohero. She is, you can clap, go ahead. She is a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a friend, and an extraordinary mayor. She made history in 2011 when she was elected the 68th mayor of Knoxville and the very first woman to serve as mayor of Knoxville. She is also the first woman to serve as mayor of any of the 4 big cities in Tennessee. She is a dedicated community leader. Before becoming mayor, she served on the Knox County Commission. She worked as a community development director, a nonprofit executive, an urban and regional planner, and a community volunteer. As mayor, she has worked to promote strong neighborhoods, a vibrant economy with job creation and retention, a thriving downtown area, and a community that lives in harmony with the environment. And every day in Knoxville, I see the success of her programs, and I am so very proud. And I see her also tackling really tough issues such as gang violence and how to give our young people better options. She believes in diversity, and the mayor's office reflects the diversity of our community. I've seen how she's surrounded herself with strong, outstanding women who carry out her policies. And I'm convinced that if we roll the clock back to 1920, we would see Mayor Rohero marching, carrying signs, and lobbying the legislature for the passage of the 19th Amendment alongside the women who are on the monument we're unveiling today. Please welcome my friend, Mayor Rohero.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chief Justice Sharon Lee. You make us all so proud, and I feel like I should be introducing you to this crowd and not the other way around. It is a pleasure to join my fellow mayors, other elected officials, the women trailblazers, the trailblazers here and in the audience, and all the enlightened men who are here. Let's hear it for the enlightened men who are here. We know that our electoral successes have only been possible because of the hard-fought victory that this monument celebrates. It's hard to believe, just think about this, that less than 100 years ago, when my own grandmother was 33 and she had already had 5 of her eventual 10 children, that this raucous ratification fight took place right here in Nashville. It seems inconceivable today that this question had to be put to a vote, a question as basic as whether women deserve the full legal rights of citizenship. And it seems incredible today that this important vote for women, with national and even international consequences, came down to a single Tennessee legislator, switching sides at the last minute due, as we heard, to the prodding of his mom. Since I'm here representing East Tennessee, since Mayor Burke's not here, I'm going to take the privilege of claiming Harry Byrne. He actually lives kind of on I-75, on Iota's, right? It's a little closer to Knoxville, but about halfway between Knoxville and Chattanooga. So we claim him, don't we, in Knoxville. And so, in fact, folks are working right now, and Wanda Sobieski is one of our great women in Knoxville, and she is working right now with others to place a statue in downtown Knoxville in honor of Representative Harry Byrne and his mother. She will be on that statue as well. Yeah. And I think we're still raising money, so if you want to contribute, oh yeah, she'll talk to you. That statue will complement our women's suffrage memorial statue that's already on Market Square, which was also created by Alan LaQuire. We have had the opportunity to enjoy and admire Alan's work for about 10 years now. But of course, what this monument today celebrates is bigger than any region or even any single state. It represents the realization of the dreams of generations of women to be fully recognized as free, empowered individuals. We know that there are still inequalities in our society and our political system, but the women here today, in elected office or not, are a testament to how far we have come and how determined we are to keep moving forward. Thank you. Okay.
It is my pleasure to introduce a good friend and another trailblazer in Tennessee. Kim McMillan was elected mayor of Clarksville in 2010, sworn in January 2011, and was the first woman to serve as mayor of any Tennessee city with a population over 100,000. The mere fact that her exclusive club has now tripled, at least, is exciting to celebrate today. Kim has always been a leader. Kim's a lawyer, but she started as valedictorian of her high school class in Knoxville. She went to UT. She served as executive editor of the Tennessee Law Review. In everything that she has done, she has excelled. Kim went to the House of Representatives and served for 12 years, and there was the first woman elected twice to the position of House Majority Leader. She also served as a member and as an officer of the prestigious House Judiciary Committee. In 2007, she became senior policy advisor to Governor Phil Bredesen, and she also served for a short time on the administration and faculty of Austin Peay State University. Kim is a graduate of several leadership academies. I could spend all day today telling you about all the things she has done in her community. She will probably tell you that she is most proud of her family, her husband, Chancellor Larry McMillan, a native Clarksvillian, and two grown children, Katie and Ryan. I've learned over time that Mayor McMillan and I share a love for Beatles songs, but mostly what impresses me and what inspires me is her desire to train and mentor the next generation of leaders, especially women leaders. She continues to blaze trails today and to understand the importance of bringing along behind her all the young women who will follow. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Mayor Kim McMillan.
Thank you so much, Connie. And she is true, or I guess I should call you Justice Clark. We're friends, and so sometimes I forget to use the appropriate title, but thank you so much for that introduction. And I feel like Mayor Berry and Mayor O'Hara that I feel like I should be introducing the person that introduced me, and it should probably be reversed for everything that all of the introducers have done. What I wanted to do today, I know a lot of thanks have been given to everyone that's here, and I want to also express all of my thanks, especially to the Eskin family for the mentorship and tutelage that I received from Jane Eskin throughout my career, and also Lois DeBerry for what she did for me when I served in the General Assembly and otherwise. But what I really want to talk about today is why we're here. And I look to something that I believe is very important to me. My friend Jennifer Rawls, who I know that many of the people on this podium know and are very familiar with, wrote a book called The Vote. And this vote is a fictional retelling of the fight for suffrage against a backdrop of opulence and elegance, money, power, greed, altruism, and civil rights. It's the story of politics versus personal rights. At a time when our nation was between wars, before the Great Depression, when patriotism and prohibition were in vogue, both parties needed an infusion of new voters to carry victory to the White House. But the men who ran the railroads and the manufacturing plants needed cheap labor, child labor. So every member of the Tennessee General Assembly was lobbied, followed, hounded, cajoled, and even bribed. And the fate of the nation would rest on the shoulders of the Tennessee General Assembly. This book tells the story that I think is so important, and if any of you have not read it or haven't read the other books that have come out about the telling of the story of the passage of the 19th Amendment, I think it is well worth reading. But what I want to do today is I was privileged and fortunate to write the foreword to the book that I just described to you, and I'm going to read you the foreword that I contributed because I think it is appropriate for where we're here today. When I first met Jennifer Rawls, I was majority leader in the Tennessee House of Representatives. I had been appointed to serve on the Economic Council on Women when she was hired as the executive director. I was excited to work with someone who was an alumnus of my law school and who was dedicated to helping women achieve economic autonomy. One of the reasons I think that we both believe is that we have a responsibility to honor those people, especially those women who have done great things in spite of tremendous obstacles. Over the 20 years or so, I have campaigned and held elective office as a member of the Tennessee General Assembly and now as mayor of Clarksville, Tennessee, and it always amazes me when women tell me that they don't vote or that they vote for a candidate that their husband or someone else chose and told them to vote for. Yes, that still happens in the 21st century, more often than you would like to believe. But I think this story of why we're here today is a wake-up call for any woman who hasn't realized that voting is a privilege. It's more than a right, it's a privilege, and it's a hard-won privilege that applies to, we sometimes take it for granted and we shouldn't. So before the fight came to Tennessee in 1920, many of the earliest women's advocates were imprisoned, or they were actually committed to mental institutions as advocates for something that they were doing just for promoting their actions in promoting equality. Yes, there are different times with different sensibilities, but in my opinion, that should only embolden us to exercise our rights rather than excusing our absence from voting booths and public office. Neither the U.S. Congress nor the Tennessee General Assembly has come close to reaching the 50% mark for equal representation of genders, despite the fact that women register to vote in greater numbers than men. So gaining the right to vote was just the first step. There is still much more work to be done. It is my hope and belief that this story that we are here to honor today and the women that we are here to honor today will open a dialogue for women everywhere. We need to talk about why women aren't running for office, why we allow so many of our leaders to fall back on the phrase women's issues as if we were talking about something inconsequential or inconvenient. And we need to talk about how women can support other women in order to serve in public office. The women that are portrayed in the book that I spoke of, and also on the memorial that we are going to be dedicating, and all of the other women that serve here in Tennessee and that are present in this audience, have proved that women working together
can absolutely change the world. I know that we can meet the challenges of today with that same kind of grit, creativity, and we can focus on what our foremothers brought us and brought to the suffrage cause. I am, for one, am ready to do just that. And I hope that every member that is here today and everyone that may be watching or everyone that may hear about this celebration will join me in that cause. Thank you.
I was excited to be asked to introduce Memphis's new mayor, Jim Strickland. I've known Mayor Strickland for many years, first as an accomplished lawyer and then as a sensible leader on our city council. We all knew from watching Jim Strickland over many years that if he took a position on a hard topic, it was well thought out and well researched. He was unafraid to be brave in the face of public disapproval to do what needed to be done. Time and time again, his positions proved to be the best for our city to move forward. We were thrilled when he won the election as our new mayor. He's a pragmatic visionary, uniquely suited to lead our city. Mayor Strickland has made an array of appointments to leadership positions that are inclusive, that represent both genders and ethnically diverse, including his own communications director and the first female fire department director in Memphis's history. He truly embodies the modern day Harry Burns, who partners with us women to realize all people's dreams. When Mayor Strickland ended up with a last-minute conflict and couldn't come to today's ceremony, he knew exactly who to send as his emissaries to communicate his personal stake in the future of women in our state. First, he sent his wife, Melanie. They embody a modern-day partnership that we all recognize. She is a 16-year professional at Johnson & Johnson, travels extensively in her work, and also an accomplished public servant with great passion in the field of mental health. He also sent his daughter, Kathleen, who will have a special role in today's ceremony. I understand that today, Women's Equality Day, is Kathleen's birthday. Kathleen, how old are you today? Or can we say happy birthday, Kathleen? Happy birthday, Kathleen. I give you Melanie Strickland.
Thank you so much. Mayor Strickland wanted me to personally tell you how he regretted he couldn't be here today. He did have an unavoidable conflict. However, you should know today is significant for him. Jim and I have been long-term friends with Paula Casey, who was an instrumental part of making this happen and part of this team. She's spent so many hours working on this, and certainly Jim has known about these efforts from the very beginning. If you know Paula, you would know why, because Paula will keep you informed. So, Paula, thank you for keeping us updated, and a sincere thank you for all of your hard work and dedication to such a very special project. I'm really proud to be here today and share with you just how important Memphis is in this right to vote. Some of the earliest women's suffrage leaders came from Memphis. In 1920, when the state ratified the 19th Amendment, Representative Joe Hanover and T.K. Riddick of Memphis were crucial leaders. It was a united Shelby County delegation that introduced the 19th Amendment into the General Assembly right here in Nashville, and Representative Joe Hanover of Memphis was the floor leader in the State House. He kept the pro-suffragists, I said that wrong already, Paula. He kept the pro-suffrage forces together and was a strong ally of Carrie Chapman Catt, who you will see later today featured on the monument. So you see, Memphis is especially proud of this day and the unveiling of a monument that represents a significant change in our Tennessee and national history. We're also proud of our Trailblazers, in particular the late Representative Lois DeBerry, the first woman to be elected Speaker Pro Temp and the longest member of the House at the time of her death in 2013. I'm just going to add, she's from Memphis. We fondly recall the memory of Representative Berry and Jane Eskin, and we also want to say a special thank you to Beth Hartwell as well. So again, Jim sends his best wishes and congratulations to everybody here today. I can assure you he will be dropping by for a visit right here in this park the next time he's in Nashville. Thank you.
Welcome to my side of the world. Thank you for coming to Centennial Park. As I was walking up here today, I ran into one of my lifelong friends, Eileen Behan, who is also a former elected official. And as I was telling her, both of our mothers were friends. We're now friends, have been lifelong friends. It is so gratifying at my age, at my stage in life, to be doing something that I know my mother would be so proud of. I get the distinct privilege to welcome you here, and I also get to introduce to you the person who brought the statue to life. He is someone that is very dear to Centennial Park. He brought Athena to life inside the Parthenon. While you're here, please go by and see it. He and his family and his wife Andre are very involved in the fabric of Nashville and in the artistic world of Nashville. They provide free time in his gallery for artists to practice their art, and he spreads the joy across Middle Tennessee with the structures like Musica and his artwork in Knoxville as well. He's been an integral part of Centennial Park. It's been a pleasure, and I want to also thank the ladies for bringing the statue to Centennial Park. As we've mentioned several times, it will get a very prominent place in the renovation of this park, and it does kind of seem symmetrical. We're kind of celebrating a little bit over the 100-year anniversary of Centennial Park, here with the suffragette statue that's going to be coming to life as we unveil it shortly, in a time where Nashville has the privilege and the pleasure to be being governed by the first female mayor, and I've had the joy of working for her. This is a great time for Nashville. With that, I want to introduce to you Alan LaGuire.
Thank you very much. I've only got about an hour's worth of remarks. So no, I'm a terrible speaker, so I'll make this really short. Several people have asked me in the past few days, how does it feel to have that 42-foot tall monument right there of a goddess Athena, and then now to have this monument honoring 8 real women, historic figures, trailblazers. You know, it's really, it feels like an extension of the same thing. The Athena represents the type of woman that we're honoring today, intelligent and fierce and a warrior. And I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by that kind of woman in my career from the beginning and in my life. My mother was such a woman. And so I feel like they've made my career, they've made my life, they've enriched my life from the beginning. And of all the commissioned work I've done, it's been a joy. This project has been a joy from day one, mainly because of this group of 9 Athena women that I've been working for the past 2 years, who are set an example for me every day of how to live an engaged and meaningful life. So anyway, I hope some of you young ladies will help me unveil in a little while. And my daughter Acadia is here. I'm hoping that this monument serves as an example to young women of what they can accomplish when they work together. If you observe, if you walk all the way around the statue in the back, you will see that they're supporting each other, so that from the back you get a real sense of the solidarity that it took to gain the right to vote. Thank you very much.
I'm so honored to have been invited to participate in this wonderful day. It's my privilege to introduce to you Travania Dallas Dudley Henderson, the granddaughter of one of our very own suffragist leaders, Ann Dallas Dudley. Travania is the daughter of the late Guilford Dudley Jr. and his wife Jane. She is principal and founder of the marketing department in Boston, a cost-effective alternative to a traditional advertising agency. She's a regular contributing author and speaker on marketing approaches and family caregiving issues. She's won numerous awards for her creative work and generously serves on multiple boards, some of which include the Foxcroft School, the Foundation Board of the Massachusetts College of Art, and the Boston Ballet. Travania currently lives in Boston with her husband John and her son Guilford Cole Henderson. Again, it is my privilege to introduce her.
Thank you, Ellen, for that gracious introduction. I am so excited and so honored to have been invited to speak on this auspicious occasion and to be able to take part in paying tribute to these 5 remarkable women. I'm grateful to the members of the Tennessee Women's Suffrage Monument Board who've spent 6 long years working to recognize these suffragists, including my grandmother, and by extension, all the women who fought for our right to vote. Thank you all. My grandmother died before I was born, so I wasn't fortunate enough to know her personally, and I can't share any charming childhood stories, nor could I possibly enumerate all her accomplishments and keep it under the allotted 4 minutes. So instead, I wanted to share some key lessons that I learned from her and from her fellow suffragists. They are to be secure in the justice of your cause, to remain undaunted by setbacks, and instead of directly fighting the opposition, to actually make the opposition's argument work in your favor. Starting with the suffrage movement and continuing throughout her life, where Ann Dallas Dudley saw that change was needed, she made that change happen. She never let convention stand in her way. Instead, she used convention to make her case. Yes, of course she was radical, in a period where women who made speeches were considered by many not to just be out of place, but to actually be a moral threat to the nation. Sorry, y'all. She insisted on being heard. If women weren't allowed to speak in halls, they had to speak outdoors. So she gave open-air speeches, like the one right here in Centennial Park in front of a crowd of over 2,000 people. That was shocking. But she also embodied all the feminine virtues. So when suffragists were categorized as ugly man-haters, she provided a living rebuttal. She was beautiful, elegant, eloquent. She had 2 charming children, a devoted husband, a lovely home, and astonishingly, she wanted to vote too. Why? In order to better fulfill her womanly duties. When the antis argued that, given the vote, women would neglect their home for politics, she countered that, in fact, women needed to vote to properly care for their homes and their families, in order to ensure that their water was clean, their milk was pure, and their children wouldn't be infected with typhoid or tuberculosis. As you've heard, in a public debate, her opponent asserted that only men should vote because only men bear arms. She rebutted, yes, but only women bear armies. At her most eloquent, Annie transcended all questions of race and class. She declared, "We have a vision of a time when a woman's home will be the whole wide world. Her children, all those whose feet are bare, and her sisters, all who need a helping hand. A vision of a new knighthood, of a new chivalry when men will fight not only for women, but for the rights of women." And then she persuaded enough men to make that happen. Ultimately, Annie's greatest strength must have come from her absolute conviction in her cause. This helped her deal with the ugly names, the catcalls, and the heckling that she inevitably met during the long struggle. She was convinced that suffrage was a matter of simple justice. And I quote, "I've never yet met a man or woman who denied that taxation without representation is tyranny. I've never yet seen one who was such a traitor to our form of government that he did not believe that government rests upon the consent of the governed. This is a government of, by, and for the people, and only the law denies that women are people." She and her compatriots saw that law changed and did so with grace, courage, and conviction that their fight would lead to a better world for all. I, for one, am awed and grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne and Paula, for asking me to participate in the celebration to honor the history of women's suffrage in Tennessee. Governor Roberts, my great-grandfather, was part of the sad and maddening geography of the southern states, all rejecting suffrage for women. Once he turned in favor of women's suffrage, however, he took a hard turn. He called the special session, which was certainly not a given. He implored the legislators to support votes for women. And Dallas Dudley and Governor Roberts campaigned together in that legislative session, and she later campaigned for Governor Roberts in his unsuccessful bid for re-election. You're going to hear next from the grandson of Ann Dallas Dudley, Guilford Dudley III. Ann Dudley, like other thoughtful women of the era, went from the parlor to politics. She was involved initially in women's clubs promoting the progressive and woman-friendly issue of temperance, and later in the more public women's suffrage movement. Dr. Dudley's grandmother was accused by the aunties of neglecting her family, as you've heard. In fact, Dr. Dudley grew up on a diet of family stories about his father and aunt accompanying his grandmother to meetings and events anytime she was needed away from home. Dr. Dudley knew his grandmother very well. She wrote to him at least twice a month when he was away from home in boarding school. Her discussions of religious questions were formative in his life. She assured him that his prayers, even for small things, would be answered, but probably not in the way he was asking or expected. As she hoped, Guilford Dudley has led a useful and faithful life. A graduate of Yale University and the Yale Divinity School, he was an ordained Presbyterian minister teaching history of religion at various universities in the Northeast and in the California higher education system. Later, he was trained in Jungian psychoanalysis and has been a Jungian therapist for the last 30 years. Later, Dr. Dudley's grandmother and Carl Jung, both born 10 years after the Civil War, did much to expand the possibilities for individuals to live richer, more fulfilling lives. Dr. Dudley's own work continues their legacies. Dr. Dudley is writing a memoir in which his grandmother, Anne Dudley, received significant focus. I can't wait for the book to be available so that we too can sense her energy and her spirit dedicated to the good of humankind. Dr. Dudley.
Thank you, Claudia. My sister Trevania has eloquently enumerated my grandmother's many accomplishments and a good many things about her character. Almost never does anyone credit Anne Dallas Dudley for saving someone's life. In this case, it was a child whom Nashville's most prestigious doctors declared unable to live and therefore useful only for his organs. The child was 3 days old and unable to eat or drink. It was starving. The surgeons had opened the child's abdomen, but the surgery revealed nothing. They pronounced the child as all but dead and asked the parents for its organs. Then, by all accounts, Anne Dallas Dudley tore into the hospital room like a tornado, heard the death sentence, and said, "We'll have none of this. Give us the name of a doctor who thinks differently than you two." The surgeons backed up, unaccustomed to a woman being so unintimidated by their authority, and went into a huddle. Reluctantly, they offered the name of a doctor they considered to be a country quack. Anne Dudley demanded the quack's name and address and told them to put the baby in the back of her car immediately. And she sped straight to Dr. Kasparis's infirmary outside of Nashville. Dr. Kasparis agreed that the child was about to die and ordered a milking nanny goat to be brought in from the field. With no time to sterilize the milk, a hand began to bring milk into the child's face, spattering it all over the child. And eventually the child was able to suck in the flow of milk and start to live. That child was me. And the story bonded me to my grandmother until she died more than 2 decades later. What the story says about my grandmother is that she both used her aristocratic standing to face down these distinguished doctors, and at the same time went beyond it, going to a so-called country quack. In my grandmother's world, and one to which I became increasingly attracted, inclusiveness and fairness were more important than the exclusiveness of social class or the medieval cult of womanhood that required women to be submissive. In fact, in her crusade for suffrage, she crossed the barriers of Jim Crow and enlisted African American women throughout the South to join the suffrage movement. She had a relentlessly humane spirit, and it belongs to her legacy. That spirit permeated the letters she wrote to me after I was shipped off to a boarding school outside of Boston. In her letters, she described the values by which she lived and commented on passages from the Bible, from poets, from Abraham Lincoln's reflections on the Bible. My grandmother was brilliant in balancing her Southern heritage with her sisterhood with women in the rest of the country. Her humanitarian instincts led her later to become president of the Maternal Welfare Organization of Tennessee, whose purpose was to promote birth control and family planning, especially among the poor in rural Tennessee who were burdened with families too large to feed. Later, after the onset of World War II, she volunteered to work for the Red Cross, always devoted to saving life across all of its borders, including quacks and goats and challenging newborns.
Hello everyone, my name is Ramesh Akberry and I'm a state representative from District 91. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Representative Brenda Gilmore. Representative Gilmore represents the 54th District right here in Davidson County, and she does an absolutely fabulous job. And the State House is not where Representative Gilmore began her service to Davidson County. In 1993, she was elected to serve the 1st District for the Davidson County Metro Council, and she did that until she was elected to the State House in 2003. Now, if you want to talk about a representative who is involved and who is in leadership, this is Representative Brenda Gilmore. She's actively involved in the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, Women in Government, the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, the National Caucus of State Legislators. Anything you can think of, she's working hard and doing her part. Here in Davidson County, she's a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, as well as a member of the Lynx. She works as hard as she can, focusing on issues related to criminal justice reform, the environment, and anything she can do to keep her district moving forward. So y'all, if you could help me welcome Representative Brenda Gilmore.
Thank you, and thank you to Representative Akberry, who's a trailblazer in her own right. I just want to give a quick shout out to my colleagues from the Tennessee General Assembly, Representative Karen Camper, of course Speaker Harwell, of whom you'll meet shortly, Representative John Clemens, who's a supporter of women, Senator Yarborough, and Senator Thelma Harper. The person that I have to introduce to you is Juno Frankie Pierce. She was born during or shortly after the Civil War to Nellie C., the house slave of a Smith County legislator. Although Frankie Pierce was the daughter of a slave, she was educated at John G. McGee Freeman School. McGee School was a private school for African Americans founded by the Presbyterian Church as a mission. She also attended Roger Williams University in Nashville and taught for a brief period. She then married Clement C. Pierce and lived with him in Paris, Texas until his death. After his death, Pierce returned to Nashville, and in 1923, she opened the Tennessee Vocational Schools for Colored Girls, where she served as superintendent until 1939. Her mission was to create a vocational school for delinquent black girls, since African American girls were not permitted in white juvenile institutions or schools. They were placed in local jails if they became delinquent. Without the Tennessee Vocational School, black girls would have had to go to jail. At the invitation of suffragist leader Catherine Kinney, Pierce addressed the May 1920 State Suffrage Convention held in the House chamber of the Tennessee Capitol. "What will the Negro women do with the vote?" she asked her audience. "We will stand by white women. We are only asking one thing, and as my mayor from Nashville has shared with you, she asked for a square deal. We want recognition in all forms of this government. We want a state vocational school. We want a child welfare department of the state and more room in state schools. After the passage of the suffrage amendment, Pierce and Kinney were active in local Democratic politics. The vocational school for African American girls became a part of the legislative agenda of the suffragists and the newly organized League of Women Voters of Tennessee. So a shout out to the League of Women Voters of Tennessee too. After an extensive lobbying effort by the women following the year in 1921, the General Assembly passed the bill creating the school, and the school operated even under another name to 1979. Pierce continued to live in Nashville after she retired. She had excellent political instincts and held an annual breakfast at the school for state legislators and other community leaders so they could observe the operation of the school. She served as chairman of the building campaign for the Negro Vision to raise money for the building of the Blue Triangle branch of the YWCA in 1952. Before the Civil Rights Movement in 1960, Pierce led her women's club on a march to the city to protest segregation in public facilities. Frankie Pierce died in 1954 and is buried in the Greenwood Cemetery here in Nashville. During this time, Jim Crow was in full force, effectively separating blacks and whites. But African American suffragists and white suffragists set aside their differences. They worked together for a cause that they deeply believed in. We owe a great deal of gratitude to the suffragists during this time and the courageous suffrage name who happened to be an African American, Juno Frankie Pierce. We celebrate her bravery, her love, her fairness for women's rights, regardless of color, and her determination, and thank the organizers for finding a prominent place for Juno Frankie Pierce. Thank you.
Well, I am just so deeply honored to be here today to introduce one of our modern trailblazers and our only living trailblazer, Beth Harwell. It's fitting that we honor Beth as we unveil the Tennessee Women's Suffrage Monument because Beth stands in a direct line with the suffragists who fought so valiantly to ratify the 19th Amendment. Because of their efforts, all American women gained the right to vote. How proud they would be of Beth, the first woman to serve as the Speaker of the Tennessee House of Representatives. Beth was elected Speaker of the House by her House colleagues. She is not only the first female Speaker in Tennessee, but in the entire Southeast. Beth has been a strong advocate for tougher sexual abuse laws, victims' rights, welfare reform, children's issues, and education. She's been the prime sponsor of many of the state's education reform laws. A friend of small business, Beth was twice awarded the Guardian of Small Business Award from the National Federation of Independent Businesses. In addition to her legislative accomplishments, Beth served as chair of the state Republican Party from 2001 to 2004, and during that time, the Republican Party took control of the state Senate for the first time in 140 years. She won numerous awards, including the American Cancer Society Legislative Leadership Award, the 2013 Conservation Legislator Award, the Champion for Children's Award, and the Junior Leagues of Tennessee 2012 Legislator of the Year Award. She is a two-time recipient of policy. In 2015, Beth was the recipient of the Health America, a national recognition for her work on mental health issues. Beth Harwell received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Lipscomb University and a
She has been an assistant professor of political science at Belmont University. She and her husband Sam have 3 children, Allie, Sam, and Tucker. Please join me in welcoming Speaker Beth Harwell, a modern-day trailblazer in Tennessee.
Thank you, Justice. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't say a big congratulations to the committee. I think some of you may have thought the path to today was easy. It was not. In matter of fact, there was a time when I had a state official actually say to me, these women are... You don't know the strength of these women nor their tenacity. They are going to pull this off, and in fact, they did. Congratulations. From our many wonderful speakers already, we understand that Tennessee's history is rich with women who have blazed the path for others. Today, along with 2 women that I have always held on a pedestal. Jane Eskin probably would never even remember this, but before I even ran for office at a women's political caucus event, she came up to me and encouraged me and said that you can have both a career in politics and public affairs and a happy and healthy family. And in fact, Jane did, in fact, do both, and her family is a great tribute to her. And Lois DeBerry, my dear, dear friend, I still miss her. When I was elected to the speakership, and the first day I was in my office, the very first person that came by to see me in my speaker's office was Lois DeBerry. And she walked in with that tremendous stride that she had. She looked me right in the eye, pointed a finger at me, and she said, "Girl, I've got your back." And so, as we say on the House floor, on a point of personal privilege, I'd like to take a point of personal privilege today and share just one personal thing with you. Early on in my career, in 1995, the Tennessee General Assembly did a reenactment of the passage of the 19th Amendment, the ratification in Tennessee. And it was my privilege that day to invite a special guest, my great aunt through marriage, Margaret Wyatt. And those of you from Williamson County might be familiar with Wyatt Hall as you come up Hillsborough Road. That was her home, her farm. This is the newspaper article from it, August 19th, 1995. She was there with me. She was 92 years old. Here's what's so special about it. She was actually there the day. Isn't that amazing? Her mother knew the significance of that day and took her out of school, and the 2 of them attended that event together. This is her picture, and this is actually what she gave to me. Isn't that amazing that that was worn that day? So as I preside over the chamber as the first female speaker, I definitely remember those who came before me. And today I am overjoyed that we are rightfully recognizing the place of those women, both the famous and the not so famous, and the tremendous role they have played not only in Tennessee's history, but in our great nation's history.
Hello. How you doing, Dick? All right. Lois, that's what she was affectionately called. Lois Marie DeBerry. She came from humble beginnings at Bunker Hill, Memphis, Tennessee. The L stands for a legislator, and leadership. While attending Hamilton High School, she showed that leadership. She would always have women around her, girls around her, trying to teach them how to accomplish something. She went to graduated from Lemoyne on. While there, during the 60s, during the time of change in this country, while at Lemoyne, she, Nellie Powell, and Hazel Jones, in essence, tried to run the school. And y'all know, Lord, she's going to try to run something. The I stands for she is very intense and very insightful about things that should be done and how to accomplish those. Oh, she's an organizer. She can organize for you, or Speaker Harwell organize against you. You will want her to organize for you if you're trying to accomplish something. S is for sincere. She was sincere in whatever she decided to do. If she knew it was right, whether she was by herself or not, she was going to pull that wagon. And along the way, she knew that she has to set an example for other women. For other women to be promoted into running for office, in the private sector, on boards, on commission, to be policymakers, because there's something that's said behind every successful man is a woman. Well, nowadays, you got the right to vote, behind every successful woman is a man. You have to increase that, because you bring a different perspective to problems that we have to solve together. You bring a perspective that really can move us in the right direction. You put a lot of men together in a room, and they're going to lead you way this way when we ought to be going this way. You ladies can clap. You know it's the truth. Okay? And between the two is where we need to be. There's a word now that is frowned upon. It's called compromise. This country was built on compromise. We vote for people who have sense enough to say, let's compromise on something that can be beneficial to all. Not just one way. Beneficial to all. In a role as Speaker Pro Tem of the Tennessee House of Representatives, as Speaker Harwell has mentioned, and maybe not mentioned, it is a very difficult role being Speaker and Speaker Pro Tem. When there's heavy lifting to do, the Speaker Pro Tem do it. When there's light lifting to do, the Speaker does it. Lois was devoted to her family, to her church, Greater Abyssinia, and to the ladies in red, the Deltas. We have more elephants than they have in Africa. She was also devoted to the Lynx, and Mrs. Strickland, she worked very hard for Memphis, Shelby County. Very, very hard. And to you, and all of you in the sound of my voice, there is no reason for any woman or any American not to vote. It's like your high school diploma. They used to tell us that's something no one can take from you. And we must exercise it. We had the lowest turnout recently in Davidson County. I know that sometimes we say certain things about candidates, but one of them going to win, and they'll be governed. Remember that politics is the art of governing people. We are the people. And I'm not running for any office, but I want you to know that we have a civic responsibility to go to the polls and cast for whoever you want to. But go. One last story about Lois. It's 3 years now that she's passed. And one day, the Lord was walking down the golden streets. He get a tap on the shoulder. It's Lois. She said, Lord, I want to humbly bring something to your attention. He said, what now? He done heard about it already. he said, we have no female angels. Now, Lord, we need to take a vote on that. No, he kept walking, and he finally relented, because when women have something determined on their mind, they're going to achieve it. You are like the rock of Gibraltar when you're together. You can't be moved. And you have that advantage. And Lois would say, elect more women, women get out and vote, women support women, and women be women. Thank you on behalf of Lois' family, her son, and her grandchildren. We sure appreciate this recognition. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a hard act to follow. I brought notes. Even though my name is Ellen Lehman, and even though I am here to speak about my mother, I have to point out, and excuse my French, I have to point out that Jane Eskin, Lois DeBerry, and Speaker Harwell would have made kick-ass suffragettes. You could always find Jane Eskin at the crossroads of wide-eyed idealism, that's kind of hard to say, and hard-nosed pragmatism. She believed that public service was the highest calling, that what lies at the heart of public service is the opportunity to give voice to those who cannot otherwise have their own voices be heard. And in 1978, when she accepted the call to run for U.S. Senate, she did so knowing the odds were stacked against her, but that the fight was important. At the time, the cute saying of the era was, a woman's place is in the House and in the Senate. She always remembered that she stood on the shoulders of other women, some of whom will be represented in this sacred space. But they had made it possible for her to have the opportunity to vote and to have the opportunity to run. Like them, she was determined to make the path easier for generations of women who would follow. She was brave, she was resilient, she was interesting, and she was interested in the people and the community around her. Like the suffragettes, she knew what needed to be done, but never believed it was someone else's responsibility to do it. One of her favorite sayings was, if you want better government, run for office. She might have learned that from Lois. But she wasn't impressed by people who complained about the status quo without making a solid effort to improve it. Bill Clinton once commented on a video that Jane was the picture of perseverance and of bravery. With her dedication and commitment to win, she was an example to all women that they too could break into the so-called man's world. And even though she didn't win every election, she always had a winning attitude about every race she entered and every job she undertook. Like the suffragettes, or the suffragists, I have learned this morning, Jane never really wanted a fight, but she never really shied away from one either. In 1986, when running for governor, she said, I don't believe that half of the people of Tennessee gave up their right to be governor on the day they were born. But when she lost to Ned McWhirter, she climbed on his bus the next morning to do everything she could to ensure his victory. Many of you gathered here today probably heard Jane say in one of her favorite admonitions, don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can do. In the days since her recent death, many have called Mom a trailblazer. My son Jeremy, in his remarks at her funeral, pointed out that a trailblazer is a person who does something that's never been done before with the hope that people will follow in their footsteps. Trailblazers cannot act alone. They rely on those who follow. Jane, just like the suffragists we honor here today, had to know in their hearts that others would follow, better off for the trails they had blazed. Thank you on behalf of our extended family and all of our friends for including Mom in this magnificent reminder that there is much yet to be done, but that together we can indeed make a difference. Thank you.
Is everybody inspired? This has been such a great day. Thank you to all of our speakers, elected officials, and dignitaries. We found out this week that there are some descendants of Abby Crawford Milton from Chattanooga. Her great-granddaughter, Catherine Van Dusen Healy, contacted me, and she said that they were coming in. And her father, Peter Van Dusen, and his brother, Shaq Van Dusen, are Abby's grandchildren. So we are excited. And now that we know who you are, we're going to make sure you're included in the next ceremony. And we thank you for coming, and we thank you for your grandmother's service. Also, for those of you who want to know more, since Mayor McMillan mentioned a book, I'm going to mention The Perfect 36, Tennessee Delivers Women's Suffrage, which is the definitive book about what happened in Tennessee. And as we celebrate today's unveiling, we would also like to share that the story of Tennessee's role in the passage of the 19th Amendment will be commemorated in an upcoming documentary, Perfect 36, which will be available to PBS affiliates nationwide and will premiere in March of 2017, Women's History Month. Jackie Hillman, our board member from Jackson, is leading an effort to commemorate Sue Shelton White's service in Jackson. Mayor Strickland and I will be working on one for Memphis. And thank you again for all of your support in helping us preserve this history.
And now we're going to hear a lovely song, and then we will unveil the monument.
There we go. So I offer you this song that was written by a special friend of mine, Joyce Johnson Rouse, and I think it's very appropriate for the occasion. I am standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I am stronger for their courage. I am wiser for their words. I am lifted by their longing for a fair and brighter future. I am grateful for their vision, for their toiling on this earth. We are standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before us. They are saints and they are humans. They are angels, they are friends. When we know that by our efforts things will be better in the end, we can see beyond the struggles and the troubles and the challenge. They lift me higher than I can ever fly, carrying my burdens away. I imagine our world, if they hadn't tried, we wouldn't be here celebrating today. I am standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I am honored by their passion for our liberty. I will stand a little taller, I will work a little longer, and my shoulders will be there to hold the ones who follow me. They lift me higher than I could ever fly, carrying my burdens away. I imagine our world, if they hadn't tried, we wouldn't be so very blessed today. I am standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I am honored by their passion for our liberty. I will stand a little taller. I will work a little longer. And my shoulders be there to hold the ones who follow me.
Thank you, Lisa. That was beautiful and so inspirational. Today we are honoring the past with these women who you will see shortly, the present, everyone here who has supported this effort, and the future. We have Acadia LaQuire, who is the daughter of the wonderful Andre and Alan LaQuire. She is going to help unveil the signage along with birthday girl Kathleen Strickland and Alicia and Savannah Gibson, daughters of J.W. and Kathy Boatman Gibson from Memphis. So girls, come over here and we'll get you in front of the signage. They're going to unveil the signage and then unveil the actual statue of the suffragist. So let's get the girls up. Everything on there. We have the suffragist bios, the information about how Tennessee became the Perfect 36, and all of the donors. We thank you so much for your support.